Hi everyone, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Matchbox Restoration series. In this episode I'll be restoring the 30C 8-wheel crane. The 30C model was introduced in 1965. It usually came in this color scheme, a dark green body and an orange crane jib. The hook was usually yellow, but a few came with a red hook. This particular model has some chip paint all around the casting. The yellow hook has seen better times and it will need to be replaced. The crane is leaning forward a lot, probably because the rivet that holds it is worn. I'll try to fix that during the restoration process. Let's get started. I start by drilling out the rivet that holds the base onto the body. Unfortunately, I drill a bit too deep, and when checking the other side of the casting, the mistake is already visible. A bit of a rough start, but I blame my enthusiasm to start working on this particular model. I decide to drill out the rivet post entirely, so I end up with a hole in the casting that I will be fixing later on. I continue by drilling out the rivet that holds the crane in place. The crane comes off easily without any issues. Next up is the removal of the wheels and axles from the base and body. I'm using my Dremel tool to remove the small lip on one end of the axle so that the wheels can come off. With the wheels removed, I can now bend the casting back into shape. Some of the parts where the wheels sit in were bent. I use some small pliers to bend those back into place. After the base and body are done, I use pliers to remove the hook that I replace with a new one. As much as I would like to keep the original parts, this one is in too bad shape to use again. It's time to mix some paint. I'll be using the X5 and X28 green Tamiya acrylic paints. After mixing the two, I decide to add some black to darken the color even more. This works out quite good. The color matches the original one pretty close. I'll be mixing the orange for the crane with the X8 and X7 yellow and red Tamiya acrylic paint. The thinner I'm using is a Tamiya 20A. Because the red is a darker color than yellow, I start by adding a tiny drop of it to the mix. I used too much red in the past and it needs a lot of yellow to get back to the lighter color, so I'm careful this time. I'm still far off the original color, but after wrestling with half of my paint supplies, I finally get a color that resembles the original one. Finally, the paint stripping process can start. I apply some paint stripper to both the body and the crane with a brush. In my experience, it's better to apply a thick coat of paint stripper. Thinner layers will dry out quickly and will result in the paint stripper only working in on the paint for a couple of minutes. While the paint stripper is doing its work, I continue by cleaning up the base with a metal brush tool on my Dremel. This makes the casting nice and shiny again, without ruining the details. After a good 15 minutes, the paint stripper has done its work and it's time to brush off the paint with a brush. The paint comes off quite good. The crane has a lot of areas that are hard to reach, so that one will need another run of paint stripper. To fix the hole in the base, I'm going to try something that I haven't used before. Revell Modeling Body Putty. It comes out the tube in a very liquid form. I apply the putty with a flat screwdriver both on the top and bottom of the base. To avoid pushing the putty from the one side of the hole to the other, I put a piece of tape on one side. When the putty has dried, I can start filing off the excess material with a small file. The underside is easy accessible, but the top side is harder to reach. I sand away the last parts with a piece of emery paper until both sides feel smooth. One more thing I need to do before applying a base coat is drilling a 2mm hole into the rivet post. I'll be using a 2.5mm screw to secure the crane onto the body. Always make sure to keep an eye on the exact depth of the hole you're drilling. I've already learned this the hard way in the beginning of this restoration. Luckily, this part goes exactly as planned. We're halfway the restoration process and it looks like I'll need to get the last pieces of paint off the casting with some small tweezers, so don't worry about those. After removing the small pieces of paint, I can apply a base coat onto the crane and the body. I always apply light coats at a time to avoid runs or too much primer into the small details of the casting. Right after applying the primer, it always looks a bit too much, but it actually kind of shrinks while drying, so all details are preserved. When the base coat has dried, I can start painting the crane. First, I paint the parts that are hard to get to, like the space in between where the hooks will sit and the part underneath the crane assembly. This is to make sure these spots get paint enough to have the same full color look as the parts that are easier to access. I apply the same method for painting the body. Unfortunately, the footage of me painting the body cut out after a few seconds after I started. I blame my cat for this. Before mounting the axles back onto the base, I sand them with some emery paper. This way they look like new again. I put them in my hand drill and wrap a piece of emery paper around them. After that, I sand the tips by pressing them against some emery paper on my workbench. The wheels also need some cleaning. I put them in a bath of hot soapy water and give them a stir with the magic Matchbox toothbrush. After a couple of minutes, I take the wheels out and clean them. Now that both the axles and wheels are done, it's time to put them back onto the body and base. I use my drill press with my custom made tool for this. 2 wheels go on the base, the other 2 go on the body part of the model. And that's it. The 8-wheel crane started off with a worn hook, chipped paint and a crane that tilted to the front. After mounting a new hook, repainting the body and crane, and make the lights, grille and bumper look like new again, it's ready for some more years looking good. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Please let me know what you think and hit the subscribe button to get notified when I'm uploading a new video. Also keep your eye out on the community tab of my channel, where I'll let you know what I'm working on. If you'd like to have some more exclusive insights and previews of my next restoration, please join me on my Patreon page. And as always, thank you for watching.